I'm going to hit one more topic today very, very briefly, because I didn't want to let this go entirely, but you probably all saw the story that was in Atlantic magazine. And I just, since people covered it to death, I just want to say a couple quick points about it before I wrap up today. So the Atlantic, which is a radical left magazine. We've talked before in this show, stories they cover. They're anti-Trump, they're anti-freedom, they're anti-religion, they're anti-conservatism, they're anti-American. They are a left-wing mouthpiece with a name that they've had for decades and makes them sound, for some reason, the Atlantic always carries kind of the cachet of, that's kind of intellectual, because the articles are long and they're really much better. That they're not a tabloid. They're like a tabloid. But I want to tell you that what happened with this one, because it matters to understand. So the writer of this article, Jeffrey Goldberg, wrote in the Atlantic that back in 2018, when President Trump was on an official visit in France, that he refused to go visit a cemetery that contains the remains of American soldiers, that he refused because it was raining that day and he didn't want to mess up his hair. He was afraid the rain would make his hair look bad. This was Goldberg's claim. And that Trump made some reference to people who didn't survive the war as losers. Like Trump supposedly said, I'm not getting out there in the rain, ruin my hair, and to go see the cemetery, the graves of a bunch of losers. So this guy, Goldberg, writes this as though it's a serious story in the Atlantic, claiming, as leftists always do, unnamed sources, anonymous sources, informed sources who cannot be identified. That's his source for the story, unnamed sources. So he runs this story, and fortunately for President Trump, and fortunately for America and people who care about the truth, numerous people spoke up right away and said, wait a minute. That is not what happened. He was over there and he was told that it was too stormy. It was raining. It was too stormy for the helicopter to take him. It was dangerous because of the wind and the rain for the helicopter to fly that day. We all know bad stories about helicopters flying in bad weather. So he was told, and so somebody, fortunately, decided to actually dug up the story and found the actual military record to show what happened that day, which was, they were told documents from the Navy, from a Freedom of Information Act, Trump's 2018 visit to Ain Marne American Cemetery near Paris, and the documents say his transport was canceled by the Navy due to rain. In addition, two other people who are not particularly friendly to President Trump, one of them being this guy, Zach Fuentes, who is an aide to John Kelly, also not too friendly to President Trump. Zach Fuentes said, I'm going to tell you that I know exactly what happened. We told him he couldn't go because of the rain. That's what happened. So everyone there who knows about the story is saying, this is a lie. This didn't happen. Trump did not do that. But, Atlanta could not resist the idea of running the story anyway. So they run the story. All these people actually there spoke up, and not one of the alleged unnamed sources came forward and said, okay, I'm not going to let this story die. I'll tell the truth. I heard Trump say he can't stand the military. I heard Trump say some bad things. So, everyone there saying it didn't happen. The Atlantic, who hates Trump, saying it did happen. And by the way, I want to say a couple of things about this guy. First of all, about Atlantic itself. So the Atlantic, 70% ownership of the Atlantic magazine belongs to Lauren Powell Jobs. So she owns 70%. She's a total leftist. She has donated in the range of $1.2 billion to Biden and other Democrat candidates over her life. She's a leftist. She loves Biden. She loves leftists. She's allowed to be, but this is her magazine, radical left, never to be believed, just never to be believed. So that's one thing. But the other interesting, and I'll close out this little segment by saying this about this guy, Jeffrey Goldberg. So he was actually around, the writer of the article in Atlantic, he was around during the Obama era. And he was kind of an insider with Obama. He has his picture in the Oval Office with Obama. So he's in with Obama, and he's Jewish, this guy, Jeffrey Goldberg, and he's one of these ones, a Jewish American who hates Israel, always sides against Israel, was kind of a bit of an advisor to Obama, telling him how to talk about Israel and what to say about them, because he's, it's an astonishing thing, but there are actually millions of them, Jewish Americans who hate Israel. Who the heck knows why? Anyway, so he was a conduit. Goldberg is one that is giving voice to the kind of mission, the kind of messaging, talking points from Obama out to the American public. So he's a big insider with Obama. Well, one thing just to think about for a moment is, if you're Jeffrey Goldberg, and pretty much everything Obama did in the foreign policy world, especially related to Israel, you felt you were kind of like, feather in your cap. Yeah, I helped Obama. And it's all been eviscerated by Trump. Trump moved the American embassy in Israel to where the Israelis wanted it, in Jerusalem, their capital. Trump stood down, finally got America out of the ridiculous Iranian deal. You have Trump making all sorts of accomplishments in the Middle East that Obama could never make and didn't try to make. And so I could say, as a personal motivation possibility, is the idea Goldberg just does not like Trump kind of really leaving his, Obama's foreign policy legacy in ruins. These things matter, folks. I have to tell you that even though I can tell you these stories, I'm going to guess a lot of you already realize the story probably wasn't true. Trump wouldn't say that. Trump has been so favorable to the military. He has raised their pay. He has refunded the military. Trump is a huge supporter of the military. And that story, I read and think, that can't be true. But you know that because you're smart and you read. But they're literally, you wonder why people like Goldberg run stories like that in the Atlantic, because there are ignoramuses in this country who read one story and think, oh, well, I thought I liked Trump, but if he's not very patriotic, if he said that about American soldiers, there are people who would draw conclusions from idiotic stories like that. That, my friends, is a very, very frustrating thing, but I want to urge you to be alert from now until Election Day, and frankly, now until the end of time, to recognize that the Democrat media mob, the leftists in this country, including the Atlantic magazine, will go out of their way to attack President Trump and conservatives and Republicans and America and freedom and capitalism every chance they get. Start to be more and more discerning, more and more willing to say, I heard that story, but then again, it was in the Atlantic, so never mind. Or, so at least I'll go research and find out myself what happened. Because you have outlets like this, the Atlantic, and other, sadly, many, many leftist outlets working day and night from now until Election Day, cooking up the next accusation against Trump, hoping to stir people into hating him and voting against him.